Patrick Moore just won the 2026 Texas Pro and qualified for the Mr. Olympia for the first time in 5 years, defeating the favorite to win Texas, Regan Grimes, along the way. Before we review that matchup in a future video, today I want to compare this new version of Patrick to his all-time best, his physique from the 2019 Mr. Olympia, which could already be considered legendary. We all remember how impressed everyone was with Patrick back then, especially because he was one of the first open competitors in years to bring a vacuum to the Olympia stage, at a time when the division was dominated by bloated stomachs. So today, we're putting Patrick Moore from the 2019 Mr. Olympia against the version who just won the 2026 Texas Pro, front double biceps, and even though it doesn't look like the amount of changes you would expect to see in 7 years, there are still some notable differences. For example, his arms seem to have gotten worse. I don't know if it's a matter of how he's holding his arms, but they do look a bit down in size now compared to 2019. Another thing that we can notice is that he was much drier back then. He was crisp back then. Now obviously he has increased in size, especially with the lower body, but also if we're looking at the lat flare, what's impressive is that his midsection stayed the same, still very tight, and overall, this gives him a much better X-frame than before, with the improved lats and quads. Now, when deciding which version is better proportion-wise, it has to be Texas. However, we need to see the rest of the poses to determine if this recent version is actually too soft in comparison. It may already seem so in this first pose. Front lat spread is next, and the lat difference we saw in the previous pose may have just been a matter of posing, because now it would seem that 2019 has the superior lat development. The legs are a bit bigger in Texas, but maybe that's just a matter of holding more water, because honestly, 2019 looks so much more polished overall. The midsection definition, the chest details, and even the lower body, 2019 is so much better in terms of muscle dryness and definition. I even like his shoulders more back then. Now, we can also notice a difference in the calves in favor of 2019, but that's mainly because of the camera angle. The 2019 version is being shot from a much lower angle, which actually further accentuates the leg development he has now, because despite the angle difference, Texas still presents with the much better quad sweeps. However, overall, I gotta go with 2019 for this pose. Side chest is next, and did he get rid of, or at least try to get rid of, some of those tattoos on his right arm and shoulder? It definitely looks so. And speaking of the arms and shoulders, they looked much better back then, bigger and more defined at the same time. The same thing can be said about his chest development as well. His pecs definitely popped better back then. Now, if we're going downstairs, we don't have a difference in size anymore in favor of 2026, but we can still see a huge difference in overall dryness, definition and muscle separation. So that 2019 Mr. Olympia physique was indeed special. It looks to be better than his recent victory so far. But let's not draw a definitive conclusion before we see all the poses, especially since we're about to check the back poses next. Back double biceps, and we can confirm that indeed in terms of lat width and overall back development he has improved since then. It may be a matter of how he's holding the pose too, but this could definitely be considered an improvement as well. So indeed his back is much better now, but the question remains, is the conditioning trade-off worth it? He was so much crisper through the glutes, hams and even the calves back in 2019. Now it's true that nowadays, with the judging criteria, you don't even know what to expect anymore. We often see soggy glutes and hams defeating crispy defined ones simply because of the overall flow. But anyway, at least when we're talking about the same guy, with the same qualities, maybe conditioning does matter on the Olympia stage. So it really comes down to the rest of the opposition. He might get a bit dwarfed with his 2019 version, but if everyone is dry as nails, his recent version might seem a bit off. I don't believe that would be the case, especially on the Olympia stage, where we know that with the crazy schedule nobody comes in at 100% anymore. So judging by that, I believe his bigger version from Texas would actually fare better on the Olympia stage today, simply because of the increased size. Back lat spread, and indeed his back got bigger in the meantime, but he lost all of those crazy details he had back then in the process, probably because of a lower level of conditioning. Another thing worth noting is that Patrick is already in his 40s, So even though muscle maturity could potentially make the physique look better, sometimes you can also lose some of that muscle quality as you get older. But overall, I still think he was too small back then to be competitive in the higher callouts at the Olympia, and I think his recent Texas version would fare better. However, if you want to focus more on overall quality, 2019 was better because of the higher level of dryness and detail, and this is the thing with bodybuilding. An athlete could look perfect by himself, but ultimately, it is a sport of comparisons. And from the back, I believe the 2026 Texas version would compare better against the rest of the field because of the increased mass. Side triceps, and just like the side chest, this pose has to go to 2019. The difference in size is not noticeable in favor of Texas anymore, maybe quite the opposite actually. His arms, chest and shoulders all looked better back then, and with the higher level of dryness, the details through both the upper and lower body, including the midsection, are far superior in 2019 in my opinion. So once again, the increased size of the Texas version doesn't really make up for the loss in conditioning and overall detail. 2019 Mr. Olympia wins both side poses in this matchup. Abs and thighs is next, and even though his shape from 2019 is damn impressive in terms of overall bodybuilding completeness, you gotta choose his 2026 Texas version here. Most importantly, the legs have increased in size, although I have to admit that the feathering he had back then was great. But the lats and the taper go in favor of 2026 again, so it really comes down to who he's facing. If everyone else is 100% in terms of conditioning, the Texas Pro version might be a little too soft. But overall, the 2019 version was simply too small and flat, and that's why it only got 10th place. Still impressive for an Olympia debut, but considering that this wasn't even the strongest lineup, it shows that he still had a size issue. So once again, side by side, 2019 could be considered better here, but in an actual lineup, I think the 2026 Texas version would fare better. Most muscular pose, and now it looks like 2026 is wider with superior shoulders, which might be true because he's not as dry. He's fuller overall, but his chest looks pretty flat, even with the lower level of dryness, which is a bit worrying. The legs are fuller as well, but softer. So in the most muscular, it really becomes a matter of dryness versus fullness, with the added point that in 2026, his chest doesn't look as full despite him being fuller overall. Now the pose is called the most muscular, so overall size and appearance are obviously important, but overall definition should be too. So once again, it really comes down to what his opposition looks like. And since everyone seems to be getting bigger and fuller year by year, I believe a fuller and bigger version would fare better. Even though personally, I always prefer better conditioning, when of course, it's balanced with overall fullness. Being dry and flat is not the answer. In conclusion, I don't have a definitive answer on which version is really better. Personally, I still consider his 2019 Olympia version visually superior, but like I kept repeating throughout the comparison, bodybuilding is a sport of how good you look standing next to the other guys. And while his recent Texas version is indeed not as dry or as defined, it is more complete and, in my opinion, more competitive. So Patrick is now qualified for the Olympia, but considering the field today, I think a top 10 finish still seems out of reach for him. So, what do you guys think? Was 2019 Patrick actually better, or does the bigger 2026 version have what it takes to do better at the Olympia? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.